focus on the group dynamic and your ability to, as a sideman, your job is to make those in which you're working with sound and be their best. And that should also happen off stage. If I guess what it is like, support in as many ways as possible, emotionally, as a friend, as a hang. I can't tell you how many times I've told like up and coming musicians, like there's a couple just moves that you can do if you go out on your first tour. Like when you guys all hop in the van and everybody's all exhausted and you pull into a gas station and you get out, just grab the windshield wiper and wash the windows for whoever's driving. Or, when you pull into Starbucks, like learn what everybody's drink is and pop in and it costs you $18.78 to make your whole van happy.
Right.
And that goes a long way.
Hello and welcome to the New Music Business Podcast. I am your host, Ari Herstand, author of How to Make It in the New Music Business. Today, my guest is Nick Bearden. I recorded this live from Retrolab Studios in Nashville, Tennessee, on one of my trips over there. And Nick and I have been friends for many, many years. He is a sideman. He is a bassist. He is a drummer. He is a guitar player. He is a producer, a recording engineer. He wears many hats. And he used to live in LA, and we used to play gigs around town, and he would produce my friends' records, and I would always see him on stage at the Hotel Cafe playing with just about everybody and anyone. Now, he linked up with Jamestown Revival, which if you don't know Jamestown Revival by now, you should, especially if you're into Americana music. They're one of my favorite bands right now. I've seen them all over the country in various venues, and I've been seeing them since they played to about 20 people at Room 5 in LA, and I just saw them at the Fonda playing in front of 1,200 people, also in LA. Pretty cool story. He has been there. Nick Bearden has been there since the beginning, since those Room 5 days in front of 20 people, and has since played thousands and thousands of shows with them. But we actually don't spend a whole lot of time on the Jamestown story, a little bit there, but we spend some time really digging into managers and the business setup and how freelancers operate. And he tells actually a really crazy story about one of the shadiest managers I have ever heard about. I will let him tell that story to you as we get into it. Needless to say, Nick is a great storyteller. He's a really great guy, very talented musician, and I think you're going to have a lot of fun listening to this one. Of course, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Ari Herstand or at Ari's Take, and then please sign up for the email list. That can be found at aristake.com, where you'll be notified of all upcoming events and get regular information on the goings-ons in the music industry. All right, let's cut to the interview. Nick Bearden, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we are here in Nashville, Tennessee at Retrolab Studios. This is Nick's studio. This is your studio.
Yes.
I am currently staring at a wall of guitars and basses. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 of these bad boys are literally 3 feet from me. Yes. And then there was that J200 and the J45 in the other room that we were
There's
just
a couple
jamming.
more behind you over there, too.
Oh, man. So how many total axes do you have? How many guitars? How many basses?
I think when it's all said and done, between what's here and in California and Austin, I think I'm over 60 or 70.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Wait, you still have stuff in California? Mm-hmm. Who's holding it for you?
I have a couple at my folks' house.
Okay.
I've got a couple acoustics, and I think there might be an electric out there. 2 electrics, maybe.
So we met in LA.
Yes.
You were living out there. We met, I want to say, pre-Jamestown era, right before that. But, most people know you as the bass player of Jamestown Revival.
Yeah.
And you have been touring with them now for, what's it been, 8 years?
It's been a minute.
Yeah. And how many shows would you say you've probably played with Jamestown Revival?
That's a good question. I mean,
you have to think that hard, that long. It's over 1,000
easily
over 1,000 shows.
Yeah.
Over 2,000.
Maybe.
Wow.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, you were road dogs for a long time. I mean, you were averaging what, like 150
on a slow year
dates a year on a slow year.
Yeah.
Okay. You have been a working sideman for your entire career, for the most part, and you play the drums, you play the bass, you play the guitar. Do you play any keys?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I technically played most of the B3 on like the first Jamestown record and parts of the second one.
Oh wow.
I'm on actually a number of other records doing the same thing. In fact, it's this thing that's sitting right here behind us. Is one song.
Where's your Leslie, by the way? I was
right behind you, right over there.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Yep.
One of 5.
Yeah.
That's not a joke. The rest are in storage down the street.
You have 5 Leslies. Okay. Useful.
Yeah, it's totally necessary.
What? Okay.
Well,
totally necessary.
That's a whole other podcast on the
right.
purpose of 5 Leslies.
Anyway, so you play a little B3.
But I don't really know what I'm doing. I hear it in my head. And I kind of feel it in my bones, and then I have to sequester myself in solitude and bang out in reality what I hear in my head, and ideally capture it before the moment gets lost. Believe me, I have tried to have the keyboard make sense in my mind, and it just flat doesn't, and it frustrates me because when I don't dream much, but when I do one of 2 things. I fly a helicopter, which I've never ridden in one, and I rip on the B3, and I can't, to me, if as backwards as this sounds, I think it's because of, when you play drums, you kind of tend to kind of like right side dominate with your like kick is your oomph and your, you know what I mean? Same thing with the acoustic guitar or the electric or whatever. It's like right hand is a lot of your booty, and the left hand is the melody. With the piano, and it's the other way around. So if it's as backwards as it sounds, if the bass was on the right side and the highest part of the piano was on the left, I feel like I could totally do it.
Yeah.
But it just feels like I'm swimming upstream on the thing.
So, I mean, most of your work has been on the bass, right?
Well, it depends on the era. So there are people that to this day, if you were to pick them off the street in Northern California and be like, hey, do you know this Nick guy plays bass in an American band? Be like, no, he's the drummer in this other band.
Okay. So like, you were drums first?
That was my first instrument kind of period.
Yeah.
And then I started playing guitar shortly after that. And so really in the grand scheme of things, they kind of started around the same time. But when I was in Northern California, I did a bulk of my like professional work on drums.
Yeah. So when you're in LA, you are, I mean, gigging, just taking whatever gig. You're in like the hotel cafe singer-songwriter scene, right? For the most part. Yeah.
The first thing that really kind of started picking up steam was I worked with an artist who actually lives here in Nashville now by the name of Sarah Hayes.
Okay.
And she was very promising at the time and up and coming, and kind of like a blonde singer-songwriter, Orange County pop type of thing, who has since turned country and written like, number 2 hits for Rascal Flatts, and she's got a very successful writing career for a bunch of people here.
Yeah.
But that put me in the position to be up in LA playing at the hotel and playing at the Roxy and playing...
What were you playing with her?
Acoustic guitar.
Okay.
Well, acoustic and electric and vocals, and I tour managed for her and, did guitar parts on her record.
How many dates were you doing with her? What kind of
tours? We did a lot. Yeah, we did a number of cross country tours. She had bought a 15 pass, and we'd hop out and loop around for 3-4 weeks at a time. Come home for a little bit, play some LA shows, and then fly out and do something, and then come back.
What was her story? Where did these fans come from? Was she signed?
She had. There was that kind of golden era where television placements were...
It's like early 2000s?
This would have been...
mid-2000s?
No, I started playing with her in 2007.
Okay.
I think 2008, somewhere
Yeah,
around there.
that was the Grey's Anatomy, One Tree Hill,
Scrubs
era.
Yeah, one thing that really kind of, in fact, as I'm mentioning this, I'm noticing that she's signed the back of this guitar here.
Oh.
It says Shine 2009, which was like a running joke of one of the tours we did. She had, if you remember that show, The Hills.
Oh, yeah.
There was the season finale where, what is it? Like Heidi and Spencer.
I know of this show. I've never seen it.
Yeah, well,
this is like the reality version.
It's a reality
of the OC,
show,
right?
and there was like the final scene where I think they broke up with each other or something, and there was like this big dramatic moment, and one of Sarah's songs came on.
Yeah.
And it was actually a really interesting observation in how not to fumble things in the music industry, because I don't think that the song was out yet in like a official capacity in terms of iTunes and whatnot. Yeah. And I think it had been previously recorded on another record that might have been out, but the version that was placed in the TV show was not. But it was on her MySpace page. It was like kind of really discombobulated.
MySpace, yes.
And I think that it happened by way of the music's, let's see, how did this work? We had like a licensing and admin guy or something. I think his name was Michael Plin. And he had taken like an unmixed version of the tune down to somebody at
like a music supervisor?
Something, yeah. And so it's just like the doors open in the office and they're playing the song and somebody's walking down the hall and takes a double take and says like, hey, what is this? I need this song and I need it like immediately, if not sooner, for the season finale for something. So they scrambled real quick to get it in their hands. And we just flat didn't have time to get it like up in the proper channels. And overnight, I remember her MySpace plays went from, you know, a respectable couple thousand to like over 1 million something plays in less than 24 hours.
Man, MySpace.
And like the YouTube channel was blowing up and people like in Europe were saying, like, where can I get this? And they were downloading the wrong thing and the publishing was all jacked up.
Oh, man.
But it put her on a new map, if you will. And then she, from there, got a couple other pretty choice placements. I think I don't remember the name of the show, but she had written a song called Lovely. And it was like the theme song, or the opening theme song.
Oh, wow. Man, that was such the era. You know, I was paying attention from Minneapolis at this time to all of these artists. I missed Sarah Hayes. I mean, I know knew the name, but like, you know, this was like the Joshua Radin, Ingrid Michaelson, Miko era, all of that. Those artists that were just like, you know, Gary Jules, all these Hotel Cafe artists that were just like, you know, the music supervisor would show up to the Hotel Cafe
and just cherry pick
and just be like, hey, oh, Josh, you got this, that song, is that recorded? Not yet. Can you record it and get it to me by next week? And I'm going to place it like in Grey's Anatomy. And, you know, all these artists were getting so many placements.
Like the Rescues were just
the Rescues were crushing with
the,
oh my gosh, so many. Yeah, they were crushing. I mean, just all of those artists back then. And then they would do Rachel Yamagata, like all of that. They would come through. They did that Hotel Carey Brothers orchestrated the Hotel Cafe tour. So I was like paying attention to all this. I'm like, man, got to get placements. And so I like tweeted one of my songs to the One Tree Hill music supervisor because I thought it would be perfect for the show. And she like tweeted me back and was like, oh, I love it. And like placed my song in One Tree Hill. It was an incredible placement. And like, you know, luckily it was on iTunes. The iTunes skyrocketed that night when the song, because this was that era, this was probably like 2010, so a few years after that. But man, it was like I was trying to follow that Hotel Cafe sync model because I saw it was just like exploding all of these singer-songwriter careers.
I feel like within the last 10 to 15 years or so, that was kind of the one golden era where there was a little bit of a science to it. Like if you lived in LA and you were a competent songwriter and you had halfway decent social skills and the understanding and aptitude to be able to just like pop off the couch, go down there and just hang and like be in the scene and like, you know, when they would close the doors late at night and like Brother Sal was rocking at the piano on that top part and you just kind of like loitered around.
All the music supervisors were hanging out
all
there.
The soups were hanging and it just, you could kind of just point and knock it out of the park. And I don't know if that got oversaturated or really kind of what happened, but there was just...
I mean, that was kind of the era where, you know, it was a very exciting time. It hadn't really formed into what it is now, which is such a machine, and there's such a business and all these sync licensing companies. There weren't that many sync licensing companies. And so like the music supervisor in this interesting time period where they didn't have the budgets where they could afford the major label, major publisher records. Now, Alexander Patsivas broke this wide open when she was working on the OC. This was the first TV show that was really placing lots of indie music. This is very early 2000s. And because of that, then she moved over to Grey's Anatomy and was breaking these indie artists left and right. And so then other TV shows like Scrubs and One Tree Hill are like, oh, we want to do that. That's really cool. They're breaking all these artists. And so it became like this cool thing to place indie music that nobody had heard of, that, you know, and they could afford it.
It was cheaper.
It was much cheaper because they didn't have to go to the major labels, they didn't have to go to the major publishers. And so, you know, but the Soups had to do the work because they weren't getting pitched these indie artists because there weren't one-stop sync licensing companies like there are now. There's so many now. And back then there really weren't any. And so the Soups were out like trying to find it, like, well, where do we find the music that works our show? The Hotel Cafe was kind of where it was. And like, unfortunately, they're not really doing that live discovery as much anymore because, you know, now they know where to go. They have their channels that's already in place. It's like, oh, I go to these, you know, 10 sync licensing one-stops where I know I can find stuff that can clear by this afternoon, and it kind of works that way. But yeah, it was an interesting, fun era. So did you meet Sarah at the Hotel Cafe?
I did not, no. Okay. When I first moved to Southern California, I wound up in Orange County. And I started playing with a San Diego based artist. And we had shared, it wasn't Sarah, it was somebody different. We had shared a bill together at a venue called the Coach House in San Juan Capistrano. And it was us opening for Sarah, and she had a different band at the time. And her manager was there. And after I was done playing with the opening artist that I was supporting, the manager pulled me aside, and he's like, "Hey man, I really like your ability to support this artist that you were playing with, and I felt like you stepped up when you needed to and kind of stayed out of the way when you needed to, and what's your availability to play with other people?" And I think he made some kind of, slimy managery statement of like, whatever she's paying you, we'll pay you triple or something. I was like, okay, here we go. And as it turns out, I think that conversation was on like a Friday night, and by Tuesday, I was Sarah's new guitar player.
Wow.
And we had a show, I think, that Thursday or Friday.
So she had a budget. I mean, was this budget, was she funded by someone, or was this budget because she was drawn and selling tickets?
I'm trying to remember back at that time kind of how that shakeout was happening.
Yeah.
There was some private investments. I think that her manager at the time, I think somehow had her also doing, speaking of placements, like she would sing not as herself, but her vocals wound up on a bunch of stuff that wound up in like soap operas and shit. And so there was like money that was coming in that way. But she did pretty well, and
the sync pays pretty well. So if you can tap into that, and especially the frequency for sure.
There was then she signed like a co-manager deal, and the guy that was the co-manager, he had some pretty deep pockets. And that kind of helped fund some things, and then we started doing some like college dates where her and I would either go out as a duo and make some bread, or we'd go out and do like an anchor date with the full band.
Did she play any instruments? She
played piano, and she would write on the piano, and some of the songs she'd play entirely herself. And, it got to the point where we were dragging around a 6-piece band.
Wow. And you were tour managing then too.
I was like her older brother, her tour manager, her vocalist, her lead guitar player.
How did you know how to tour manage, or what that was, what that meant?
I had done it before in other groups that I'd worked with. Okay. Yeah. And really part of what it was is I was just the most experienced in that entourage. Okay. They certainly weren't going to hand over the money to some other person in that operation doing stuff.
So in the other groups, I mean, how does one learn to tour manage? Like, how did you just learn on the job? It's like, did someone hand you a job description? Did someone say this is what you do?
I had no idea what I was doing.
No, so
absolutely no idea.
When they're like, "Can you tour manage?" You're like, "Yeah."
Well,
what does that mean?
I knew, for one, I was not like when I was 20 how old was I when I was like 25 or 26 or something when I was playing with her? Is that right? I was the oldest guy in the operation. So like, I'm not going to be bossed around by some young buck that really has never done this before. Like some of the people that we were out there with, they hadn't like literally never toured before. I'm not saying that as like an insult to them in case they're listening. It's just, that was the way that it shook out.
Sure.
So I think when the manager was trying to think of kind of the hierarchy of how this whole thing could make sense, he's like, you know, if there's going to be somebody that's going to have to be rattling people awake at 5 a.m. and getting them down to lobby call and like making sure that you're arriving on time and collecting the money properly and able to understand the contracts at the end of the night and can kind of wrap your whole head around this thing or just understand like where this city is in relation to the other city and not wind up 5 hours in the wrong direction.
Right.
He kind of put that on me.
So did you have, so this is, you're saying like what, 07, 08 kind of thing? So this was, what, did you guys have a Garmin at the time?
Oh, we were Garmin to the max. We had all
post MapQuest,
we had the MapQuest
smartphone.
to back up. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. And so you knew basically basic job description of tour manager is just like make sure you get to the venue by load-in time. So did they send you all the contracts? Did you
so I would get all the contracts. I was in regular contact with the booking agent and the manager and all. I mean, it was like a full-time job, honestly.
For sure.
I mean, whether I was on the road or not, every single day there was still stuff that I had to do.
Yeah.
And that whole operation was quite a bit of like all hands on deck for quite a while.
Okay.
And it was really kind of an interesting thing because she really did start to pick up some trajectory. We were spilling out of places that we initially built draws in, and next thing you know, she was top billing at the Roxy and doing residencies at.
That's Roxy. That's 500 some tickets. Wow.
Yeah. We played there pretty regularly. I mean, it's like we built it. We never did like room 5, but it was like smaller spots like that. What was that place on Highland or whatever? The Genghis Conan, like I think it was Genghis Conan. Like we'd start out in small places like that, and then it just kind of like went to the Mint, and then it went to the Key Club, and then it went to wherever that place was. That was the Knitting Factory. Like we used to play there all the time. Now I think it's a grocery store.
Yeah, it's not there anymore.
But that whole thing really started to kind of take off quite well, but unfortunately we didn't realize this at the time. Like we'd kind of give her a hard time because she seemed to be sleeping a lot and just kind of overall low energy. Like we'd show up to a venue and she'd kind of shuffle in and drop her stuff in the green room and just kind of duck out for a little while. And her voice seemed to kind of blow out a little prematurely. And as it turns out, when we got home from one of the tours, she went to the doctor to see what was going on. And she had some autoimmune deficiencies and got diagnosed with lupus. And and so the doctor said, okay, well, I know that music and touring and whatnot is what you do, but first thing that you need to do is like no more planes, no more trains, no more automobiles, no more hotels, no more late nights, no more long drives. Like we had to shut the entire machine down. And then this also happened around the time that, I don't want to get too much into specifics, but I had kind of figured out over the course of a little bit of investigating over time that she was getting massively ripped off by her management.
What?
Yeah. And
How
that was
so? What did you find, or what did you?
Let's see. How can I say this without getting in trouble?
You're gonna get in trouble with who's not gonna get in trouble? Fuck these guys. If they were ripping her off, I mean, let's call them up. I'll call them out.
Well, really,
that's not cool, man.
Really, what it was
that boils my blood to hear that. Managers are taking advantage of their artists. That drives me insane.
The manager was always kind of a douchebag, and nobody. I never really cared for the dude too much.
Sure.
I had to kind of dance a fine line and kind of nod and smile and be like, even though I knew that it wasn't just the right thing. But what really started to be a red flag to me is he would tell me things like, okay, well, when you're on tour and you get this check from like when we went and played some college.
Sure.
First of all, the checks were always written out to him.
That's a red flag.
Yeah.
That is not
but
okay.
half the time
he's not the agent. He was the manager.
He was the manager.
Yeah,
but check this out.
Definitely not.
So check this out. He was the manager, but he owned the label that she was on. He managed her. He managed her producer, who was also a co-writer on her stuff. And it's like every
he's like triple dipping.
dude.
over
Here's
here.
the thing: you take you
gosh.
take that
That's definitely
triangle
conflict of
and like the trickle out of like every way of monetizing something,
Yeah.
and he just figured out a way to funnel every dime through his bullshit.
Wow.
And he was such a manipulative dude to where when I first signed on, there was this big carrot of like, oh, I've got Interscope or whoever it was, like some major label was super interested in her, and they legitimately were.
Sure.
But it was like looking at it after the fact, what he did is he drug her around town and showed her to all the majors. With zero intention of ever signing anything with them. He just wanted to create the buzz that she was a hot commodity with the absolute intention of putting her out on his label, thinking that once the record came out, it was going to explode, and then he was going to get all of the money because all the placements and all of the syncs and all of the sales and so on and so forth.
Sure.
But, you know, as another red flag thing, like I, as her tour manager, the manager asked me to put up my own money to help pay for physical CDs. So I paid out of my own pocket.
What?
It's fucked up.
That is-
and then when he would sell like CDs, he like reimbursed me for that at some point in
Oh my
time, a
gosh.
little bit, but I still to
Yeah.
this day think that I was never fully paid back for that
So
shit.
like they would the venues make the checks out to
Right.
them
So
too?
back
or-
to that. So we would play a college, and then
Yeah.
and then because I was a TM, I would get the check, but he would tell me like, oh, just, you know, don't open the envelope. You need to make sure that the next day to overnight this from like FedEx to me so that I can deposit it into the account to then like pay off the credit card balance that you guys are racking up,
Oh
like
my
paying for
gosh.
hotels and gas and stuff like that. Really what it was. And he would always tell me things like, you know, it's not a lot of money, so we need to make sure that we like get it in the account soon
Right.
because we're not operating very much. Well, he would tell me that we were getting paid like $1,200 to go play some college, which I was like, well, that seems like a lot of money.
Sure.
No, we were getting paid like $8,500.
Whoa.
You know, and
How did you? But
well,
you
because
couldn't
one
open these
time,
envelopes, right? He
what's
wouldn't
that?
let you.
No, I didn't open up the envelope. So one night I was like, God, this just doesn't add up.
Yeah.
Like how much I'm getting paid, how much they're getting paid, how much the gas bill is, how much
Right.
this, that, and everything else. Like there's just no way that this is sustainable. And so one time when I was in a hotel, I held up the check just right in the light on the nightstand, and I could see how much the amount was. But then I like pulled up my emails of how much he said that we were supposed to be getting paid for that show. And I was like, this ain't right. And I just took mental note. And then several checks later, I noticed the exact same thing. And there was a couple other things.
Because
that
with colleges, it's a guaranteed set amount.
Yep.
It's not based on tickets or anything like that. So you're getting a check at the end of the night. It's already printed.
and they have a
written
lot of
out.
money, and if
A lot
they
of
don't
money.
spend it, they lose it. So
Yes.
they will gladly pay like a clown balloon making dude a boatload of money to come and do his thing to literally
Oh, yeah.
nobody in the student
Oh, yeah.
union. Like, we've all done that.
I've done the college circuit.
Totally.
Yeah, it's
But there was a couple
Great.
other things like I, without getting into details, had figured out one time that there was another like placement situation that she was in where there was kind of like a conspiracy between the manager and some other people on her business team that she trusted that they were having a like side conversation about money and saying like, essentially, don't let her know how much she's actually going to get paid for this. Let's keep this secret between us. And she started to kind of figure out, I think, like, hey, something isn't right. And so she inquired about it.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I think maybe I'm owed X amount.
Yeah.
And then their side conversation was like, well, let's pay her what she thinks it is because it's still like pennies on the dollar what she's actually going to be making, and this will shut her up, and then we can actually like,
oh gosh.
and once I saw all of that, I was like, I just can't keep this in clear conscious. So I went and had a chat with her one time. Like we went out to lunch, and I was like, Sarah, I mean, she'd been working with this guy since she was like 13 or 14. Totally trusted him. Never thought that he would, do her wrong like this. And I was like, you are not gonna believe what I'm about to tell you, but X, Y, and Z. And she was just completely shocked and heartbroken. Like, no way, that can't be. And then once I showed her like in writing, like what was going on, she's like, holy shit. And so she literally kind of like shut down her own machine in addition to what her doctor said. Like she fired everybody. She got rid of she just didn't know who to trust, you know?
Sure.
And it boiled down to, I think,
that'll
me
fuck
and
you
like
up.
one or two other people in her whole operation.
That is so fucked up. And I don't know how these people sleep at night. I don't understand
know.
how they think that that's okay. You come up with a deal with your client. This is what I'm taking. I'm taking 20%, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And now you're lying to her
Yep.
about the money that's actually coming in. How the fuck do you sleep at night?
don't
Like,
know.
how does anybody think that is okay? That is okay business. Like, did this dude have a gambling problem, a drug habit?
I
Like,
don't
what
know.
the fuck?
I think
Like,
he was
that is
just
so messed up.
I think he was there was like a certain sense of delusion of sorts of where he fit in the managerial role.
Yeah.
And I really do think that he did have like in his hand, he had the potential of a golden ticket, and he just blew it by trying to weasel and manipulate. And what was interesting is like after that whole thing kind of shook out, we went a little radio silent for a bit, and then I think word kind of spread around town that she was kind of a free agent again. And so next thing you know, her and I are going back, and I'm right back in the major labels again, sitting across the table from people that a year or two prior we had played some songs to.
Yep.
And this time they would kind of dance around it, like, so are you still? Oh, you're not working with that guy anymore? We never liked him in the first place. You know, I was like, God, this
man.
Yeah, that's an awful feeling to feel as though.
Is this dude still working in the music industry? Have you checked up on this guy at all?
You know, I haven't really checked up on him. Okay. I'm a little bit of a hippie in that I feel like that's kind of bad vibes and bad juju, and so I don't really want to like go there.
I want to check up on this asshole. I want to make sure he's not doing this to anybody else like that.
My assumption would be that he totally is, and he kind of had a little bit of a science what he was doing. He'd like prey on young, talented women, not in like a creepy, I don't think he ever crossed those boundaries.
Okay.
But it was just he knew that he could find Orange County wealthy parents who believed in their talented kid, and that he was able to leverage some certain successes that he had to then have them just completely trust him to do whatever the fuck manipulation he wanted to do. It's sad.
Oh, man. And so what did we learn from this situation that if any of these, people who are listening, these maybe younger artists, if they're getting approached by managers, what are some checks? What do we, I guess always audit your manager, always double check the numbers.
Yes.
Like unfortunately, you want to trust your people, but you know what? If they get cagey, if they get weird, if you ask them about numbers, then they're hiding some shit. Like,
check this out. So the checks would go, he had his own publishing company. And one time, I think,
because he's a songwriter,
this
right?
might have been my idea, where one time we were on tour and I told her, I was like, hey, these checks are like, do you have any idea of like how much money's going in and out of your accounts? And not because she didn't care, she just like didn't. She's like, no, actually, I don't know what that is. So her and her manager opened like a joint checking account. But instead of the checks being made out to that checking account, they would still get made out to his like publishing company checking account. So the $8,800, this is where I figured out what was fucked up, is he would deposit the like $8,500 check that I was told was $1,200 into his account. Then he would do a transfer from that account for $1,200 into the joint account and be like, yep, here's your $1,200.
Yeah,
it's
not
like,
cool.
Bro, you are just...
Wow.
It's like laundering and funneling and just so...
Oh, man, this guy needs to be taken down.
Yeah. I think there were some lawsuits and there was some...
good. I would go after this guy so hard.
She eventually signed with Warner Chappell out here in Nashville, and I think they brought in some heavy hitters and they kind of like knocked on his door and like,
good,
hey asshole,
good,
this isn't gonna fly.
Wow.
But to this day I don't think she makes money off of those records. I think he still somehow gets all of
those rights or whatever.
Yeah.
Ugh, that is infuriating. Lesson learned. I mean, you kind of have to, unfortunately, you're going,
The lesson is have an attorney check your shit and have it be an attorney that is like outside of
or your business manager who's not brought in by your manager.
Exactly.
Like, you need your own people.
Yeah.
And probably working with a producer who's also repped by the same person. I mean, there's a lot of
conflict of interest for sure.
There.
Yeah.
So that whole thing implodes and blows up.
Yeah.
Now you're not on the road as much. And now you're just kind of picking up gigs. How are you finding gigs? Who are you playing with?
Dude, back to the Hotel Cafe.
Right.
So, by this time I had made the move from Orange County up to Hollywood proper.
Okay.
And I used to live in Los Feliz, about a block and a half away from the subway. Mm-hmm. So I just walked down there and paid the $2 and pop over to the hotel. And, at that time, I would not even pay attention to who was playing or anything. And having played there 100,000 times, I knew all the door guys, and they'd just be like, hey, man, come on in. And if I didn't have somewhere to be or something to do, I was at the hotel.
Yeah.
And some of it was just kind of paying attention of like, okay, there's 5 drummers doing all the work, whether it's so-and-so or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, okay, if they have all the gigs, but then all of a sudden they get a big one and they got to leave for a while, like who's filling in for these things?
Sure.
So I never really wanted to like steal anybody's thing or try to like elbow my way in, but a lot of the conversations just started with the fellow side guys of just talking to them in the green room and being like, just getting their advice. In fact, like Justin Glasgow, I never met him until living here in, for the listeners, it's an LA dude who's just a complete ace, and he plays all the instruments and everybody loves the guy. A lot of the gigs that I got were because he was the dude that played with somebody usually, but then he was on some other gig. And so I was like inadvertently his sub.
He was, when I got to the LA and the Hotel Cafe scene, I was going to the hotel all the time. This is like 2010, 2011. Justin Glasgow was on every single gig. Like I would see him on stage playing every instrument. One night he was on drums, one night he was on piano, another he was on guitar. I'm like, man, who is this guy? He had all the gigs.
Yeah, and eventually I wound up being one of those dudes where the trunk of my car was full of all kinds of stuff, and I'd show up at 7 and leave at 11, and I had played with 4 different people.
Wow.
And I've got charts
so how
all
did you
over the place.
become that guy? So you just talk to all the other side guys, all the other freelancers, and be like, hey, I play bass, I play drums, if you need a sub, like give me a call.
Some of it was they had seen me play with Sarah or some of the other artists that I would just kind of like moonlight with in and out of the hotel. And then when you're there enough, it's not a very big place. So and I'm 6'3", so it's
you
like
stick out.
I kind of stick out, and I would also make a point to try to have at least once, if not 2 or 3 times a year, kind of a big blowout hang at whatever house I was living at. And I just invite everybody, every musician that I knew, and it's just kind of like, bring your instrument and we'll just jam and stay up all night long and hang and network and schmooze. And there's really no agenda behind it other than just trying to, like, I'm very community and friend oriented, and I just like just connecting those dots. And I feel like the hang and being there and supporting people and making it a point that, like, hey, I'm going out to see your show, not because I really want anything out of it. I just want to support the music community.
Nice.
And then one thing will lead to another, and they'd be like, hey, I feel like I've seen you play with somebody. What's your deal? Or don't you play this? Why are you playing this instrument? And I'd
friends
be like,
want to work with their friends, and it's just that you're building relationships. And it's like it sounds like it kind of happened organically, where you were, yes, some could call that hustling. I mean, you're out most nights, but it's like, at least you enjoy doing it, and you're meeting people in a genuine way.
Well, and I think too, there was maybe a short list of certain dudes that would get called, where in the event that there's one type of sub where it's like people know in advance, like, hey, I've got this show booked in 3 weeks, and so-and-so can't make it. Can you do it? Then there's the show is tonight at 8, it's 6, and so-and-so missed their flight or like broke their arm skateboarding, or their car broke down, whatever. Like, can you be there like right now? Yeah. And so there was an era when I lived in LA where this bass right here that's all beat to shit, and this Telecaster over here that's beat to shit, they both rattled around in the trunk of my car, not even in a guitar case, 24/7. And even though, in both places that I lived in Hollywood, I was within minutes of the hotel. Yeah. You know the drill. The traffic there can be a fucking nightmare. Right. And there was one too many times where I'd get the phone call, and I might even just be at Trader Joe's or like a mile away, and I would need to be there in 45 minutes, but I didn't have time to like go home and grab a guitar and a pedal board and like bomb down to the Hody. And so I just thought, if I can be kind of on call all the time, then that will also set me apart from the rest a little bit. And, you show up and there's obviously the people have some pretty the expectation is like, okay, you can hang, you might not know all the parts, but just like keep an eye on the keyboard's left hand. And
Right.
as a musician, once you learn how to use your ears and listen and use your intuition and stay out of the way and like do what's needed.
Yeah.
I think I helped out a lot of people in certain pinch moments
Nice.
that helped quite a bit.
So, I mean, that's great. And then when it came to, because like your most high profile gig now that you've had for 8 years is Jamestown Revival. And how did that happen? How did you meet the non-brothers, Zach and Jonathan, who were kind of doing their acoustic duo thing for a little while? I remember seeing them at Room 5 Hotel Cafe. Like Room 5 holds held RIP, held like 60 people or something.
Yeah,
It was a
if
tiny
that.
little listening room. Maybe not even that many, 50 people. And then, right, I mean, they were doing the acoustic thing, and then it just seemed like they just like exploded. And how did that happen?
Yeah.
How did you find them?
Well, so there's actually a little bit of a connection to Sarah to that. There's a show that takes place. I don't know if it still does anymore, but it was once a year for a number of years. And it was put on by these guys, Jeremy Koff and Chris Ang from Coffee House. And the show was called Evening of Independence.
Okay.
And I don't know if it was some kind of a benefit show or what was going on, but it was at the Ford Amphitheater.
Oh yeah, nice.
I had
Beautiful.
played that with Sarah in like 2009 or 10.
Was that like 1,200 cap?
I think so.
Something like
yeah,
that.
it's a
Seated,
really
outdoor,
cool spot.
nice amphitheater.
But so I had played that, so I was like at least familiar with what the evening was, but I completely forgot that was an event that took place. And I was, I'm friends with, I think, a mutual dear friend of ours, Asia Grammer, who at the time was not Asia Grammer.
Right.
And she called me up and said, hey, Katie Shorey and I are going to pop down to the Evening of Independence. Do you want to come with us? And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Who's playing? And she said, rattled off some people. And then she said Alan Stone was playing.
Oh, yeah.
And he and I had met on a co-writing session long before anybody knew who Alan was. So I was like, man, not only do I want to hang out with my friends, but I'm really curious to see what Alan is up to these days.
Yeah.
So she swung by and I think picked me up, and we went down and found our seats, and then they dimmed the lights and out walks Jamestown. And I had no idea who they were. Nobody did.
At the time, it was just a duo, right?
It was just them, and they had been in town. They were still dripping wet from getting into town. Like they had been in town for maybe a couple weeks, if that.
Originally from Austin?
Austin, yeah.
Okay. And they moved to LA.
They moved to LA,
Gotcha.
yes. So they come out, and it's just Zach and John, and then they had, because I'm talking about it, his name is slipping my mind, but a friend of ours, I'm going to say playing drums, but it's like kind of a conservative way of putting it. Like he had like a kick drum and a tambourine. He's kind of like holding down the beat.
Oh, okay.
And the music was very similar to another group that I had worked in. I was like, man, I haven't heard this kind of music in a while. And it's something that makes sense inside of me, if you will. And I was like, okay, I'm on their wavelength. I get this. And this style of music right now is not super prevalent in Los Angeles, and we could use this. This is great. But I had noticed that they didn't have a bass player. And, side note, like I have a little bit of a, I guess you could call it like a pet peeve of bands that don't have bass players.
Okay.
I'm not saying that because I make a living doing that, but it just for some reason makes me feel a sense of anxiety and uneasy.
Oh, okay.
And to like case in point, when the White Stripes came out, I loved them / hated it because it didn't have a bass.
Right.
Did I tell you this story?
No.
Oh, get this. So I got the CD and I burned it into some computer recording thing, and way back in the day I recorded my own bass lines
on the White Stripes,
to the White Stripes. And then I reburned the CD, and it just said, it was like a CD that said White Stripes plus bass.
That's amazing.
And I just
just for you, just
for
you
me,
to listen
yeah.
to?
And I'd like put it in my car, and like when I was driving around, and my friends would like hop in the car and be like, dude, what is this, like a deluxe edition?
Right,
like, what White Stripes is this?
That's amazing.
And I'd be like, no, I just put some shit on here because it makes, I don't know, it just fills it out a little bit. And they're like, can you burn me a copy of this? I'm like, oh yeah. So now there's probably like 100 and something like rogue copies of like
right.
of White Stripes plus bass. So when I was at that show and they didn't have the bass, I was like, oh, they're not doing this on purpose. Like, it must be that scenario that I talked about a second ago where their bass player missed a flight or broke their arm or couldn't make it or is double booked or whatever. And, they only came out and played 4 songs. But halfway through the second song, because I had played that show before and I knew the promoters, I was already texting them like, hey, Chris, I'm at the show. These Jamestown dudes are great. And I'd love to have a conversation with them. Not because I wanted to elbow my way into like be their bass player, but I just thought, and my initial email to them was like, hey guys, sorry to see that your bass player couldn't make it. I would love to at least just put my name on the list as a sub, so that in the event that a show like this happens again, you're not left high and dry.
Nice, yeah.
And cue my last name of Bearden helped stick out like a sore thumb when that came through their email, because they're like, wait, there's a dude with the last name Bearden in the show, and he's are we related to this guy? What's going on? So we start opening a dialogue, and the very next day, we go to Chick-fil-A, which I'd never been to before. And over some fried sandwiches, they're talking about what they've got going on and their headspace and musicality of kind of ideas they had. And we went back to my studio, and I played them some stuff that I had done, and just it vibed, you know? And so we just kind of were like, well, shit, I think maybe we should get together and jam over some shit. And so they came up to the house, and I don't know if you ever came to that Hollywood Hills place, but I kind of had a little jam spot set up, and we just kind of goofed around on some tunes, and it clicked. And initially they wanted me to play drums for them because that dude that was at the show wasn't a drummer.
Oh, wow.
You know? And they're like, we don't really need bass. We kind of want some percussion to hold us all together. And I was like, for as much as I know what I can and can't do, I don't think that I'm the right fit for this, for one. And for two, I also, I don't want to make it seem like it was super calculated, but there was a part of me that was like, okay, for right now, this is kind of a baby band. And I knew, having worked with so many artists in LA before, that there was a little bit of a snowball effect and a trajectory. And like you said, you kind of start playing shows at the Room 5. Well, you're not going to really be bringing your drum set, even though I have before at the Room 5. Most 9 out of 10 gigs at the Room 5 are going to be acoustic. So I was like, if I'm on drums, I'm not playing that gig. If they're doing this thing, I'm not doing that gig. If they're doing this thing, I'm not doing this gig. But if I hop in on bass, I can be a lot more, is it malleable, pliable? Whatever the word is I'm looking
malleable.
for. Yeah.
Sure.
I can maybe...
More useful to the operation.
Yeah. I was like, I can bring the pedal steel to this gig and play that, or I can play acoustic or mandolin or baritone or bass, and a lot more diversity with what the show would call for. And I also knew, it's no disrespect to the other bass players, but I had worked with a lot of dudes in town, and I thought, okay, they might bring what they do to this band, but it might not be what necessarily Jamestown needs from kind of a soul level.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I, if I can kind of toot my own whatever, I felt like I got where they wanted to go. And then when we did kind of jam stuff together, they were always like, yeah, that's the thing. Yes, cool. Do that. Yes, do that. And it was always kind of like the first gut instinct of what melodic idea I had, or tone thing, or where to play or where not to play. It seemed like it just fit.
Cool.
And I figured, when the time comes and we scale things out and a drummer is needed, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Okay. How many gigs did you guys do as just the trio?
Hundreds.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize that. And
well, I say that
touring too.
I say that in that we did, for a long time. It was there's probably 200 shows we did or something.
I mean, still, that's insane.
Yeah, and I say that because it was, for a long time, it was a trio.
Okay.
We would play a bunch of stuff probably
no stomp box or anything. Did they have no percussion at all? It was just
cowboy boots, man.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of those shows that you're talking about at the Room 5, you might not remember it, but I was probably lurking in the shadows on the far left-hand side, still playing bass.
Right. Yeah.
And when we went out and did the Brandy Carlisle stuff in Seattle, that was all a trio. And
you opened for Brandy Carlisle?
Mm-hmm, yeah, we did a couple nights at the zoo. I think they have a.
Did park. Was there any representation at this time, or were you guys all just kind of booking it, winging it,
totally
figuring it
winging
out.
yeah.
How did you get the Brandy gig?
No idea.
Yeah.
I think Brandy had somehow caught wind of us, and it was like a
Okay.
personal request where she
Cool.
wanted that.
Who was booking these shows at the time?
At that time, I think it was still Rogue. Like it was, I think it was kind of
Like
all
Zach or Jonathan, just like shooting
yeah.
out emails and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Jonathan's very smart. He's a
Cool.
very, very, very smart guy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So you were just hitting the ground, grinding it out. There wasn't really any internet traction happening, right? Or sync or anything like that?
No, there was no sync
Because you
there
didn't have a record, right?
Well, there was an EP that Zach and John had recorded in Jonathan's apartment in Austin shortly before they moved to Los Angeles.
Okay.
And I don't think that record is like anywhere to be found online.
Sure.
It's funny because there's a song that we get almost every single night. Somebody shouts out a request from that record that we just haven't played in probably 7 years.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but yeah, the first couple years, even after we made Utah,
The first debut LP,
yeah,
first full length.
there was still a lot of touring that we did as a trio because our drummer, I'm trying to remember how this all shook out. He also played with Donovan Frankenreiter.
Ed
did.
Your drummer Ed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, he was off being a rock star in Japan or whatever with him. And we had another drummer that we worked with, Nick Adams, for a while. And he was great. He was such a sweet dude and great player. But he was also busy playing with David Cook and I can't remember who else.
Ed, what's Ed's last name?
Ben Rock.
Ed Benrock. So, but he didn't come in until like right before you recorded Utah,
Yeah,
right?
he came in shortly before Utah.
So you'd already done 200 shows, grinded it out or so, just as the trio, and then you guys had written a bunch, and it's like, all right, let's make a record, or how did that work?
It seems like I feel like I'm jacking up some of the storyline of when things happen, but if I remember correctly, Zach and John had gone around and tried to have some conversations with different labels.
Sure.
And they were open to it, but I think they were also just kind of like, we don't really know.
Still no management at this time, right?
No management at this time. They didn't necessarily know what, when I say they, like the labels, I think, didn't really know what was going on.
Was Mumford & Sons happening at this time?
Yes, it was very Suspenders and Kick Drum and Suitcase and Hey Ho and Banjos
Lumineers,
and Lumineers
Mumford.
and
Okay,
all that
so
stuff.
I mean, Jamestown is like, in the same conversation.
It's in the same conversation, but I remember having a conversation about that at the time that the record was being made, and that it's like, okay, we don't want to...
Let's not do that.
Well, yeah, it was like, don't have... the singer-songwriter thing was definitely on the downslope, and I think the Hey Ho stuff was definitely on like... People were starting to roll their eyes at that. Like, okay, we're a little tired of this. Like every dryer commercial sounded like a ripoff of Hey Ho, and it just wasn't.
Right.
It went from ukuleles to Hey Ho.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where like, okay, we're gonna go make a record, and we think in this Americana lane, but we don't want to gutter it too far to the left to be singer-songwriter and dismissed as that, and we don't want to be too rambunctious and just like compartmentalized as another Hey Ho thing.
Right.
So we might have been talking about this last night. It's like we kind of wobbled this fine line in between the two to try to be sensitive enough and thoughtful with the lyrics and the melody and everything to be on a hat tip to the song craftsmen people that we all admired and listened to, and then have a little bit of energy and like rambunctiousness and just kind of like wily, good time, rowdy, whatever, but not be so much so that it was just kind of like foot stomps.
Right.
And so
even the stomp claps and the yelling of the haze. Right.
And so like listening back to that record now,
and the whistles,
it I don't want to say like shocking, but I forget sometimes what that record even sounds like, and I can personally hear the timid like, we don't really know how this goes yet, but we also had not necessarily played a lot of those songs a whole bunch.
Well, what's cool about Utah, about this record, is that it actually feels fairly timeless. As in, a lot of the Americana-y stuff that was coming out around that time sounds very timely, meaning like the Lumineers or Mumford and Sons of that era and all those other bands that were coming out at the time. That's a very stamp of like 2011. It's like, oh, that's the sound of 2011. Whereas like you put on Utah, it doesn't sound like 2011. I think for one, the lo-fi nature of the record, because you guys didn't really quite know what you were doing.
Yeah, totally.
But like that's the charm of it too, is that you didn't try to be that. It doesn't sound like it was trying to be anything except just trying to make a great record, which was really cool and like serve the song's purpose and actually just like, you know, do the songs justice. And so you kind of approached it from, it does sound like a record that's approached from like a song focused, song grounded standpoint, just like let the song sing. Let's not like do any gimmicky production techniques that are really hot right now, which would stamp it of that era. So how did you record that? You went to Utah, right? That's why it's called Utah.
Yes, sir. So that record, you know, we had kind of kicked around a couple different ideas of where to do it and how to do it. And all this stuff that a good bulk of everything that we're looking at in here actually wound its way out into Utah and was equipment.
You lugged all your gear? Would you put it in a U-Haul or something?
It was in a big, huge box truck.
Why Utah? Why did you go there?
Well, Jonathan in his family, somewhere in the chain, had access to a cabin. When I say cabin, it was a sizable spot.
Sure.
Big enough for us to lug in all this shit and set up a studio. But we had access to this empty spot in the outskirts of Heber City, which is on the outskirts of Park City, which is, 30, 40 minutes. I mean, it was like an hour and some change outside of Salt Lake.
Yeah.
So Zach and John rented this box truck and they drove to my, at the time I was living in the Hollywood Hills in the studio that I had there. And every single thing that I owned that could be utilized on a record, whether it was like a mouth harp to a adapter cable to, if it made a sound or connected something or plugged into the wall, it got put on the truck.
Wow.
And then they went down to another studio of a friend of ours, Daniel Dempsey, and they got, the tape machine and more outboard gear and the upright piano and the fucking organ
you guys
and
took a piano out there.
Oh yeah, everything.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Did you find a piano tuner?
I'll tell you about that in a second. So yeah, good. Thank you for bringing that up because that's funny. That's the fun part. So we hauled out everything. I even brought drums of mine. I was like, I don't really know what this Ed guy has.
So you didn't know Ed?
I had met him and we knew him, and I mean, certainly not to the extent to where we do now, but I mean, I knew that he had some stuff, but I was like, we never know what we're going to need. Sure. And we're going to be out in the middle of fucking nowhere, so let's bring all of it.
Right.
And for as many guitars as there's, I have this same equal amount of bullshit in the drum world. But in any event, so we piled it all in there, and I think they got there before Ed and I did, and over the course of 3 days, they constructed a studio out of this cabin where the living room had these really cool vaulted ceilings, and it was like this, with the log cabin stuff, there's like really cool natural reflections, and then they took over the master bedroom and turned that into the control room.
Nice.
And then Ed and I flew in, and in the course of 5 days, we tracked 14 songs with very little isolation, no click track, no headphones.
Whoa. Just
all
live?
Yep, all to tape.
No shit.
Yeah.
You brought a tape machine out there?
Yep.
Who was engineering this?
Ryan Littman came out.
Oh, he did?
Yep,
Okay, cool.
He was helping us, and Daniel Dempsey came out, and he was helping us.
Tracking to tape.
Yeah. You know what was really interesting about that? Ryan would know the answer to this, and I wish that I knew what this contraption was, but there was some kind of an interface box where we were like tracking to tape, but I don't know if it was like simultaneously going to Pro Tools or if we somehow like dumped it from, I know that we would dump it from the tape machine to Pro Tools.
Yeah.
But there was certain instances where we could go back and, for example, like listen to the drums and we could A/B analog and digital.
Oh,
and that was such a cool experience because I feel like I'd been in a studio 1,000 times before where we're like only tracking to analog and everybody's like, oh, this sounds so much better.
Right.
But do you really know what it sounds like? Because have you ever been able to compare things? And so to sit there and then hear what we just got through tracking A/B between the two, some stuff sounds beautiful on tape, and some, like bass really is kind of not that great on analog. It gets a little swimmy and lost in the mix, but drums are just gushy and beautiful, and acoustics get all softened up. But in any event, the drums, I mean, depending on the song, like California, for example, the drums, the acoustic guitar, the piano, the bass, and the vocals were all done live. Those vocals are not overdubbed later.
Wow.
Yeah. And things like banjo was done after the fact. When we were done with the record, I took everything back, or once everything arrived back in Los Angeles, I reconstructed my studio back up, and I overdubbed mandolin, pedal steel, B3 organ, baritone guitar, some acoustic parts to kind of like flush things out around it. And then I know that Jonathan did a couple lap steel or electric solo parts over certain things. We really didn't want to make it seem like it was overdubbed too much. Sure. It was just some things needed a little bit of flushing out. But for the most part, it's kind of like a glorified live record.
I mean, it sounds very live.
Yeah.
I mean, but in a way that it still sounds very intentional.
Yeah. We actually created our own reverb chamber out of the garage.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
We it was like I think like a 2 or 3 car garage, and we put up some speakers and microphones in the corner, and then we snaked down certain stuff, and Ryan would send like drums or vocals or the whole 2-track down in there. And yeah, somewhere on my
phone. Did you have
a
console out there?
We did not have a console, but we had like a boatload of gear out there, and we certainly called in a couple favors and AEA microphones. They're up in what is it, like Glendale or Pasadena, something, South Pass. They loaned us a couple preamps and some really nice the 2 ribbon mics that we used for all the vocal stuff.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember. I might have like pulled in a couple favors to borrow some additional microphones from people, and we just really.
So this record you did completely independently.
Yeah.
You had no label, no management at the time. Did you try to like shop it first, or just put it out independently? And then when did the manager come into play?
Right. So the record, when we went to go make it, Zach and John could correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I seem to remember it being where it wasn't necessarily the full intention of like, okay, we're going to go make a record, and this is going to be our like debut thing that we are super behind and like pushing for this.
Okay. Like
we didn't know that the end result, how do I say this? Like we weren't shooting for what we wound up with. Okay. We just kind of got lucky with what happened. And even at that, we second guessed that record for a long time. Yeah. Because trying to mix it to Ryan's credit, he
probably bleeding every channel.
Well, yeah. And it's like, I remember one time explaining it to somebody, it's like, Ryan didn't necessarily mix the record. Ryan did damage control. You know what I mean? And I say that with like, that to me is my way of trying to illustrate just exactly how much respect I have for him. He's so, I mean, I'm
Ryan Lippman is one of the best mixing
I'm almost like choking up
game.
Thinking about it, because that dude is fucking great.
He's incredible.
But it was kind of one of those things where we would like zip emails back and forth like, hey man, can you turn the snare up? He'd be like, yep, everything else is coming up with it. Or, like overheads are too loud. Well, no more piano.
Right.
And literally I did fucking tear up. Ryan Lippman makes me cry. So anyways, it was one of those things where when we were done with it, it was like, okay, now what do we do with this? Is this going to be a demo to then go back to the labels who are like, I'm sorry, who are you guys? What do you want to do?
Right.
And if anything, we thought it was going to be something that we could sell at the shows, because we were picking up a little bit of traction and trajectory, but didn't really have anything to give anybody other than an EP that was recorded in an apartment that we weren't playing any of those songs.
Right.
And like handmade goods that the guys would make to just try to make something at the merch booth.
So it was a merch item.
It was a merch item. Yeah, like they'd make jewelry and brooches and shit. So once we had that record back, I feel like we were hand stamping and making these CDs, and you never really know whose hands these things are getting into. And legend has it that one of those burnt CDs of Utah with maybe, it might have just been like a couple songs. I think we released Fur Coat Blues initially ourselves, just very rogue.
Just the song?
Just the song.
Like online?
Online, okay. I think. But I don't remember which came first. But in any event, somehow a radio DJ in Texas gets his hands on California and starts playing
his physical hands, like this, like a physical CD?
Yeah, he's got his hands on it. He's like,
because you hadn't put California online yet?
No.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's playing that song on the radio. And for whatever small market that it was fun. Because that song, unedited, is like 4 minutes long or something. Like it's kind of a lengthy one.
A little jam in the middle. Yeah. A little vamping action happening. Yeah.
And then we started to get feedback, whether it was that radio station or somebody else. They're like, hey, we'd love to play this song.
Yeah.
But it's way too long. Can you edit this down to 3 minutes and 30 seconds? And yeah, sorry that this is a repeat story for you, but it's new to the people that are listening.
Great. Yeah,
in any event, we wound up giving this song, and it created a new challenge because we thought, oh shit, how are we going to do this? Because we didn't do this to click track. There's no grid to snap anything to.
Oh yeah.
So it's going to make me cry again thinking about Ryan, but we gave it back to him, and Ryan, in his just absolute genius, was able to take an analog recording with no accountability, which speaks to Ed's impeccable timing, and he lined it all up and shortened it to 3.5 minutes.
Wow.
And then it kind of got no click track.
Oh my gosh.
And then it got sent back out to the whatever radio station it was they were interested in. And at that point, I think we were I think people in town were starting to be like, okay, these Jamestown guys they're doing something. Like they're up to no good down there.
In town, you mean in LA?
In LA, yes.
Okay. Because this you said a radio station in Texas was playing this?
Yeah.
And okay, that's random.
Yeah.
I guess the guys are from Austin originally, so it was kind of a hometown thing maybe.
Yeah.
And so you're getting some traction out there. Was that turning into, did you tour out there and it's like shows are filling up?
We would play, we wound up, for a long time we were touring around, and Zach and John would flip a coin as to who's almost ready to break down car they were driving at the time. And we'd tour as a trio then. But once things started to kind of pick up a little bit, we bought this bus, this like shuttle transport bus off of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement.
Okay.
And it was a former prison transport bus that we had. Let's see, how did this work out? We had bought it, and then only had like a short amount of time to rip out all of the diamond plate steel and like bucket seats on the inside with it. And we found like literally 2 Home Depot buckets full of like razor blades and shanks and other like sharp objects that the prisoners had like shoved into little spots to And then we barely had time to rip those things out. We put some plywood around the perimeter of the inside of this thing, piled in some boxes of CDs and our gear, and it was just like when we would turn, all the gear was just sliding around inside of this empty shuttle transport bus.
Wow.
And it's too many tours ago to remember where we went, but I think we cycled up and down the Pacific Northwest and over into like Utah, and I think we made our way down to Texas, and we really just kind of, some of those rooms we were playing to nobody, and some of them we were playing to a couple people, and I think they were able to get some traction in Texas because they're just from there, and like they've got a pretty good support system out there. And
you were selling the CD now. Now you had a CD, so you could sell that to the 3 people that showed up to the shows.
Yeah, we were selling burnt CD versions of the record where we would hand stamp with like rubber stamps the album artwork on the front and the track listing on the back, and then Jamestown on the CD art itself.
Right.
Like when we went and played with Brandy Carlisle, it was 2 nights. Each night there was like 10,000 people there.
Wow.
And we're selling CDRs in the merch booth.
Yes.
And jewelry that Jonathan, like necklaces that Jonathan had made.
Amazing.
Yeah. It was crazy.
So you did you distribute it online? Did it hit iTunes
So then, well,
because you put it out independently first, right?
We put it out independently, but we also somehow got a relationship with
In Grooves, I think.
In Grooves, yes.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yes. And it was sometime around this time that our manager had come on board.
Okay, Mark.
And Mark, yes, and how that worked out. Mark Friedenberg.
Right.
And that there was a show that would take place at, what was Jeb's spot in the Wits End?
Yes.
Another RIP.
In Venice, RIP, yeah.
Both Jeb and the Wits End.
Yep.
Man, what a sweet man he was. So there was this show that the what was her name? Angelique Shepard.
Blue Green Showcase.
Blue and Green Showcase. Yes. Did you ever go to any
Michael
of those?
Blue.
Right. Yes.
It was Michael Blue, where the blue came from, and then Angelique Shepard did the green something, and they became Blue and Green
Yes,
Showcases.
and I think his showcases at his studio, the fire marshal had an issue with it.
Right. I've been to a few of those showcases.
I used to do a bunch of those, and then they wound up moving them to the Wits End.
Yeah.
And I remember it was kind of one of those things where like it was always packed, but you never got paid.
Right.
And,
welcome to LA.
Yeah. And I had played those, because I was playing with drums with Katie Cole and, guitar with these people. So I had like done the Blue and Green Showcase with a bunch of other artists, but Jamestown had never done it. And we had enough of a thing going to where Angelique knew that I was playing with Jamestown. So she asked me, she's like, do you think that you and the guys would be interested in coming down and doing the Blue and Green? And I knew that Zach and John might not necessarily be super stoked about doing this show for free and asking Ed to drive up from Laguna Beach and drag his drums and do all this stuff for nothing. But I have not begged and pleaded, but I like really kind of sold it to them. I was like, guys, look, there's going to be people there.
Yeah.
I don't know who they are, but they're going to be there.
Yeah.
And so we, they were like, all right, fine, we'll do it. So we called up Ed, and he's like, sure, I'll do it. And we all schlepped our shit down to the Blue and Green and played, I don't know, the 2 or 3 songs we were supposed to do. And Mark was there. And I think that opened the dialogue. And he kind of saw the diamond in the rough of like, okay, these guys got something going on here.
Oh, and nice.
And thankfully, Mark, it speaks to a manager's reputation when you're out and somebody asks you like, do you guys have management? And you go, yeah. And they say the name, and then people's eyes light up and they go, oh, Mark, I love Mark. That guy's great. Like never once has anybody ever kind of taken a sigh or a pause or hesitation or been like, oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So nice. He's like the 1% of the managers who have managed to be a good guy the whole time.
Yeah, and so I'm assuming, helped facilitate the in-grooves distribution deal.
Mark's relationships run very deep.
So you put out this record independently with in-grooves, so just distribution, so they didn't own anything. Right. They were just taking a cut. Yeah. And but what started to happen, because California started to kind of catch. Yeah. Where was it catching? What was happening with that?
Honestly, I have no idea.
Because I remember, this must have been 2013-ish or so when you put this out independently, 2012, 2013. You played South by, and there was like lines around the block, and this was like you'd put the record out independently, and like, how did people found it or something?
So one thing that did help is the TV. We did like a late night TV circuit.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we did Conan, and we did
oh wow, just from releasing this independently. And Mark's relationships run deep.
Well,
cool.
So I don't remember if that was a poll from Mark, or here's one thing.
Yeah.
And this is important to the listeners. Like, never mind all the Jamestown chit chat that we're having here.
Sure.
The industry is always paying attention, whether you realize it or not. And I always like to use the analogy of whatever the neighbor in Home Improvement was, where they're looking over the fence.
Yeah.
Like their eyeballs are just high enough to see what you're doing. And you might feel like you're beating your head against the wall, or that you're not getting anywhere with things, but they know what's happening. And so the industry was starting to peek over the fence as to what we were doing. And they were coming to those hotel cafe shows. Cool. And they were standing in the back at the Room 5. And when we were opening for whoever it was, the Troubadour at the time, they were up in the upper loft, just like lurking in the shadows. And it turned into a thing where I think one of those hotel cafe shows, the like talent booker, buyer, person, whatever, for Conan, was there.
Jim Pitt.
That must have been Jim.
I know, yeah, it's Jim. Did Conan for 20 years. He's a great guy. He's now doing Jimmy Kimmel, but yeah, he was doing Conan
And so
for many
I
years.
think he went on the website and saw Mark's info and was like, I'd like to have a conversation.
He's so good about that, Jim. He finds, I mean, he's a music lover. He was booking music for Conan for, pretty much Conan's entire run.
Yeah.
And really, he's out there. I see Jim at so many shows around LA, small shows too, just like checking out the talent.
Yeah.
And now I've gotten to know him. We struck up a relationship and a friendship. And it's just so cool to chat with him because he really loves music. And he'll tell me, he's like, yeah, it's too bad, man. I thought they were going to be great, but they're just not ready. They're just not ready yet. I'm like, if they only knew that the booker for Conan is here right now watching them,
they'd be doing it differently.
Oh my, totally. I once saw a band train wreck on stage because the lead singer, she didn't prepare and she forgot half the words, and then like she couldn't find her capo.
Oh yeah.
And like making jokes, and then like brought her like guitar player over to human capo the end of her guitar.
That was me. I did that.
Right.
I remember that show.
Yeah, right. And like I'm like, man, and the place, it was sold out. It was a show. I think it was at the Moroccan Lounge actually. So there's like 250 people there, and this is a buzzing act, and like they just were not prepared. And Jim is standing right there checking them out to potentially book them at Jimmy Kimmel at this time. And afterwards I told him, he's like, that's too bad. They're not ready. I'm like, if they only knew, like, you can't, this is not the time for you to rehearse. Like, rehearse beforehand. You don't know who's there.
Another valid point for the listeners.
Yes.
If you're stepping up on stage, tuck in your shirt, tune your fucking guitar.
Right.
Bring a spare capo.
Right, man.
All that shit, man.
Yeah. It's just like, it was a bummer because I'm like, man, like that was, what a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
But that's why you gotta bring your A game every time you play a show, especially in LA. You don't know who's there.
Mm-hmm.
Live discovery still happens, and people are checking you out.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Well, and kind of a funny case in point about just how quickly / if there's even a word like wonkily, how wonky things were at the time.
Yeah.
When we did Conan, and he holds up the vinyl record and says like, "Ladies and gentlemen, Jamestown Revival."
Right.
That's not a vinyl record.
Well,
it's a piece of cardboard that we cut with scissors. Like we went to
you didn't
Kinko's.
actually have a record at the time.
We had no vinyl.
That's amazing.
And we went to like Kinko's and like printed out the logo to the size and like Elmer's glued it.
That's amazing.
Somewhere, I don't remember if I have it or if like Zach has it, but we have like the thing that was on Conan, like the fake record.
Because you have a real record of Utah, but that must have come later.
It came out. Okay. We were about ready to head out with the Wild Feathers when we did that, and I think we like the records were getting printed at that time. Yeah. That whole Conan thing happened real quick. It was kind of like, oh shit, we're doing Conan. Here we go.
Right.
But that certainly put us into a new set of eyeballs to people.
That's cool. And then because then shortly after Republic comes into the picture.
Well, so I think we did like Conan, then the Wild Feathers, and then it was South by happened after that. So there was already quite a bit.
I feel like you were telling me at the time, like, because the traction was happening, and this is iTunes era, and iTunes was doing very well for you guys, and In Grooves is like they upstream sometimes to Universal owns them, and so Universal Republic was kind of taking a look at the numbers of what was happening and saw that these numbers are bubbling up, and it's like, who are these guys? Let's see what's going on.
Now all of a sudden the labels that wanted nothing to do with Jamestown were coming back, and
of course, because you built it on your own, you had something going for you, and you had 1,000 shows under your belt or whatever it was.
Well, I don't know if it was that many at that point, but I remember there was a troubadour show that we booked, knowing that the whole upper balcony was going to be all industry.
Oh, okay.
It was like booking people and label people and whatever else, movers and shakers that are there. And I remember kind of thinking to myself, I think we might not have been told until after the fact or something like that, because I remember
that would have freaked you out.
Yeah, or maybe we caught word like 5 seconds before getting on stage, like, oh shit.
So would you say, I'm curious because, and even to jump around a little bit, because you're not with Republic anymore. You were with Republic for 2 records.
Yeah.
And now you're independent. Would you say that, what was the experience like on a major label, and are you guys looking for another major label? Is this something that you have a good experience? Like, what do you recommend in these situations? Like, what was it like to be on a major?
I think at the time, and this is an answer that is much more appropriate for Zach and John to answer,
Sure.
but I suppose being a participant in it, my personal takeaway was, at the time that happens, you think, this is incredible. Like, this is a bigger machine that has much more of a larger footprint and impression and ability to just kind of like
And infrastructure.
to just get this out there. Yeah.
Big
And
team.
I really had no idea. I mean, I knew that the first record that we put out, we had a decent amount of placements, and I had thought that was going to be something that was going to
sync placements, like TV
sync placements.
stuff.
Yes. And so I remember thinking, oh well, if we're on the major stuff, then we will get even more of that.
Right.
And it was interesting that we didn't, and I think that was because where we would normally say yes to an amount that would come our way, the label wanted more.
Oh yeah, they would price you high. So it was like, right. I mean, normal like indie placements coming through $5,000-$10,000.
Sure.
Like, that's amazing for an indie band.
For us, we're like, well, that's more than we had yesterday. So
Right. Yes,
where
thank
do we
you.
sign? And then
Right, but majors, they're gonna want 50, 60, 70, 80.
something.
Yeah. Oh, they
Too
won't
much.
go below that. Right.
Yeah, and I think that, I don't know if that turns off the music supervisor people. Like, no, we're not going to ask them. Or if it's like dealing with it seemed like a lot of things in the major would just take longer than necessary. And there was a lot of people, there's like a committee of people that had to approve of certain things. And, for a lot of that era, none of that really had anything to do with me. It's not like I was having to make any judgment calls or report.
Well, you saw you'd film like a little behind the scenes video, and whereas before you could just pop it on your YouTube.
Exactly.
This time, you had to get approval from the label
there was
and
like
everybody.
lawyers that were always on CC.
Oh, wow.
and approval for the clearance of the ability to upload something to YouTube to the writer's credits and blah blah blah. On one hand, it was great because they certainly have the relationships for radio. Like, there was a single that came out, and they would do the whole schmooze thing with the program directors in different markets, and they were tracking like which radio stations were picking it up, and they certainly had the strong relationships with like Rolling Stone or other blogs that would write about stuff.
Sure.
And I don't remember if they had anything to do with when we got on some of the other late night stuff, because we did another kind of round of things when the second record came out.
Sure.
But they certainly had their positive influence.
Okay.
But I think that to a certain extent, it also just wasn't. I don't know. I think they did give us some freedom that we were very thankful for. And I mean, for example, making the second record, that we didn't know at the time how or where or when we were going to make the second record. We had kind of exhausted the touring behind the first one, and shortly after moving here to Nashville, I popped down to Austin to start writing the next one, because the label was like, "Yo, what are you guys up to? What's next?"
Yeah.
And so we just slapped some mics up and made kind of a demo recording of I think it was Midnight Hour might have been one of the songs, and we just kind of like sent it off to the A&R guy, and he's like, "Man, whatever you're doing and however you're doing it and wherever you're doing it, this sounds great. Keep doing that."
Oh, cool.
And that essential quote unquote demo is what wound up making it actually on the record itself.
Fun.
And so thankfully, what major label gives a band carte blanche to make a record in a farmhouse in Austin, however they want, with no actual producer?
That sounds great, but I'm going to push back on that a little bit, as in what they did to your first record, which they kind of made you re-record 3 of the best songs on the record with a producer you didn't know in a very expensive studio. Yes. And those recordings, in my opinion, were the magic was stripped away from what the original recordings were on Utah, that magic that you had from that cabin. And now you had this like sheen sounding recording that didn't quite have the beauty and the soul and the magic that the first ones did. And that was kind of what they forced on you a little bit, right?
Yeah, that
So maybe everyone learned their lesson for that. You're like, that wasn't a good move. Let them do what they do best.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's good.
Yeah. And, I don't know whose idea it was to pick that producer and pick that studio and stuff. I mean, who knows? It could have been. I know that there was like a chat with Rick Rubin to have him do some stuff. And that didn't quite pan out. And there's a couple other producers. And I mean, there were some people that we certainly had on our list that we wished would have done it. And for whatever reason, that didn't line up. And then when it shook out with who it shook out with, it wasn't necessarily the right fit. And I mean, that's okay.
Yeah.
I do think that there are certainly people that are equally as loyal fans now that discovered us as a result of being a part of the major machine.
Sure.
And to me, a loyal fan who is a supporter of what we do, and they spend their hard-earned money, and they really kind of shout from the top of the mountain on our behalf. Like, I am thankful and appreciative of each and every single one of those people.
Of course.
And there very well may be some people that felt like they got alienated or don't quite understand what we were doing once things got re-recorded, but I don't think that they completely
No, you weren't written off
because
of that. Because you were still playing shows and you're bringing it hard live. And I think that's the thing is this, like, Jamestown Revival fans, what was so cool is when I saw you guys last year at the Troubadour doing those 3 sold-out nights at the Troubadour for the release show, it was everyone there knew every song. They weren't just there for one hit or one radio hit or one song that they knew. Like, they knew every word to every song.
Yeah.
And it was because, like, they'd seen you probably 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 shows 10 times. And it's like when you build it from the ground up, there's so much depth there, and people have built relationships with you. So, all right, so the recording, whatever with that, it's like, it's not just about the records the records are great, but it's about the relationship that the fans have with this band that they've been seeing for so many years, so many shows. And because you guys are so tight live and you bring it live every time. And because now you've played thousands of shows, it's like, there is that relationship that has been built with the fans over all these years. And so I think that's like one of the coolest things about Jamestown is that people aren't coming for one hit, one single. And that's why you're going to have longevity. So whether you're on a label, whether you're not on a label or whatever that means, like, that's kind of, it doesn't really matter because of how you built it in a little slower way, grinding it out, playing to 3 people, every night for so long.
Yeah.
And now you're at this point where, like, the fans are they're with you for life, which is awesome.
Well, I think I was talking to somebody about this over lunch earlier today where, in a way, and I don't want to speak on Zach and John's behalf, but at least for myself, the way that I've always viewed records is it's like a business card for ideally your live show, and like it can be its own it's a snapshot in time, and it's a moment that's captured, and it's something that you can like sell and monetize, and there is that. But really, I think that it is about like the experience in the live show and how you make people feel and the emotions that they get and all the other blah blah. But I feel like those people that are with us are because they've been to the shows and they've had a positive experience, and they've we try to not regurgitate the same thing each and every single time, even if it's 3 nights in a row. That creates like an interesting challenge. We're like, we know there's going to be people here all 3 nights. How do we make sure that we don't look out from the stage and see them rolling their eyes like, okay, assholes, we heard you do this last night.
right.
Tell a new joke, guys. Or like do a new move, or come up with some new solo or whatever.
Yeah.
So
that's great. So for just to kind of take a left turn, there are a lot of musicians listening to this right now. A lot of freelance musicians, right?
Hopefully,
right. A lot of freelance musicians who are listening because they're like, well, this is really interesting. Here's this guy who's been a sideman, and he jumped in with this project early on and has grown with it and done the late night things, been all over the world, played thousands of shows, but you're still gigging, you're still tracking, doing sessions and all that stuff. What advice do you have for giggers, for sidemen and sidewomen, the freelance musicians out there who are trying to figure out how to do what you're doing, like
Yeah.
how to be in your shoes where you can like be a touring artist, be a recording, session cat. Like, how do you do that?
How do you do that? Yeah. Well, I think first and foremost, talent is important,
Okay.
but the hang is more important.
What do you mean by the hang?
What I mean by that is don't just focus entirely on your skill set of like ripping through scales or sitting down on the drums and like doing all those Guitar Center like crash boom bang licks. Figure out how to be yourself in a comfortable way to where when it comes time to be in a tube of a plane or a hotel or a bus or a van or a Prius or whatever scaled out size that it is that you're around these people, how to get along with people, how to, if you're the funny guy, scale it back from 10 to like 4, or if you're the know-it-all or you're the, the whatever it is, focus on the group dynamic and your ability to, as a sideman, your job is to make those in which you're working with sound and be their best. And that should also happen off stage. If I guess what it is like, support in as many ways as possible, emotionally, as a friend, as a hang. I can't tell you how many times I've told like up and coming musicians, like there's a couple just moves that you can do if you go out on your first tour. Like when you guys all hop in the van, everybody's all exhausted, and you pull into a gas station and you get out, just grab the windshield wiper and wash the windows for whoever's driving. Or, when you pull into Starbucks, like learn what everybody's drink is and pop in and just, it costs you $18.78 to make your whole van happy.
Right.
And that goes a long way. And that will help with morale. And it'll be like, okay, this dude's just not in it for himself to come out here and like click his pedals and rip guitar solos and then like put his headphones in and tune out for 8 hours in the van and pretend like I don't even know this guy sitting next to me,
Yeah.
It's not just that way in Jamestown, but I feel like in any outfit that I've been in, it's like try to create some kind of a family because you're kind of married to these people.
Yeah.
You're at arm's length all the time with these people. But diversify as well. If you're a side guy, as much as it sounds like a joke to like, you don't need to be a gearhead, but take your equipment seriously. Have it be reliable, keep it in tune, make sure your intonation's fine or like in touch, and spend the money to take it to a luthier or something to like dial it in. If you're going to be working on this instrument for months at a time or hours every day, make sure that it's in good operating condition, because nothing is more embarrassing than walking out on a sold out show and then having a patch cable that doesn't work, or an amp that's about ready to die or something. Like treat yourself like you are a business and invest in your own business. And that goes from, you're representing who you're out there with. So not in like a shallow or fake way, but like dress the part, clean up your act, like, put on deodorant because you're going to be around people. It sounds so common sense, but you'd be surprised how much of that just kind of whizzes right over some folks' heads of just like, I didn't even think about that, But I always try to tell people, I'm a musician and I'm a fan of music, and I listen to things outside of what, you've been saying with me for a couple of days, what music have I been playing every day in the morning? Hip hop.
Yeah, right.
You think yourself,
old school hip hop.
Yeah, it's like,
right.
To me, I listen to that and I learn new pockets and new swagger and new ways that I can incorporate that into my own stuff in Americana or whatever, and so just make it so that you can shuffle between a pop gig and a rock gig and the Americana thing, and do it genuinely with a little bit of a spin of your own flavor, but also with an understanding of like how to do it somewhat appropriately.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. That's super helpful. Well, I have one final question that I ask everybody who comes on the show.
Great.
And that is, what does it mean to you to make it in the new music business?
Man. Making it is I don't think there's a definitive answer for making it. I think making it is, making it in the new music industry, music business is, first step, set some manageable expectations.
Okay.
And then, determine where you are now with what it would take to get to where you want that to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like you were saying earlier, like audit your own self. Like what steps am I taking in order to achieve this? You know, the definition of a professional musician is that you make money doing your craft. Whether that's $1 or $1 million, you're still a professional musician in my eyes.
Sure.
And should be in your own eyes. So to make it, I think is dependent upon what those expectations are.
So it's personal.
It's very personal,
And
you know,
it's- yeah.
and because I guess I might be a little sensitive to that because, you know, I've been doing this for a long time, and somebody will say like, well, you know, when you make it or whatever, I'm like, what does that even mean?
Right.
You
Like,
know,
I am making it.
like
I'm
not
making it.
I'm not killing it. Like I don't drive a Lamborghini, but I also do this for a living, and it's somewhat sustainable,
Yeah.
you know? So making it to me is don't beat yourself up too much about it, I guess, you know,
All right,
because I just don't let yourself get in your own way of thinking like, I need to be the next Lady Gaga, or I need to be the next John Mayer. Because if you get in your own way trying to do that and that doesn't happen, then you're selling yourself short for whatever it is that you might be capable of doing. Just the most important thing is to just be authentic, be genuine. Don't be a jerk. Don't burn bridges for an immediate advantage for a long-term failure. Just follow your heart and don't follow trends for things, you know, because all those people I just rattled off, they weren't copying somebody else. They were being themselves.
Right.
And I think that, I mean, even just, I hate to keep kind of circling things back to Jamestown, but it's like, I think that is one of the things that has created its success is we've always tried to do things genuinely and authentically because people can smell and see and like the bullshit meter just pegs red when people are trying to just like skirt the system or buy their way into something or cheat, whatever. So yeah, making it a new music business. Just don't give up. Keep all those motivational posters that you see in the doctor's office, do that, but in the music industry.
I love it. Well, Nick Bearden, thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been great.